Hello, everyone. This is Nayiri from Low Carb and Fasting. Well, today I have the honor of not only one great man, but two great men who are mighty enough to be ahead of everyone, shaking the nutrition world, being good role models, certainly in the carnivore community. And yes, you guessed it. So we are discussing the carnivore diet today and hopefully clarify or bust some myths which are commonly spread about the carnivore diet. They're both carnivore coaches. Let's welcome Casey Ruff of the Boundless Body Radio. Casey, hi.
Hello. Thank you so much for the invite. I don't know about great men. Stephen is definitely a great man, and it's a high honor to be hosted on the show and be hosted with him as well. I was fortunate enough to just host him on my show again for the second time, and it was a wonderful episode. He's doing amazing work, and so are you. So it's an honor to be here.
Coach Stephen Thomas, aka the UK Carnivore. all your links will be below, so people can check out your sites. Stephen and Casey, welcome to Low Carb and Fasting.
Well, thanks for having me on, and Casey and yourself, you're both doing brilliant work. So it's a pleasure to be here.
This is actually, I've been waiting to do this, and I wanted to bring you to my channel, Stephen, because you invited me to yours and we talked about type 1 diabetes. So this is overdue. So it's about time, and you have to come back so we can, because we can never discuss the carnivore diet enough.
No.
It's relatively new, when no matter how much we think everyone knows about it now, many people still don't. So before we get to it, Stephen, let's start with you. Can you please introduce yourself to the audience in case someone doesn't know you? But your channel link will be below as well. So people...
No worries.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I got to age 50 and everything was going wrong. So I was getting pre-diabetic, and I was getting fatter, and I had a coronary artery calcium scan of 639 and lower left quadrant pain, and I had constant athlete's foot and a big stress spot on my forehead. And yet I was doing everything I was supposed to do, follow the food guidelines to a T for 35 years. I didn't smoke, didn't drink. I didn't eat red meat. I ate lots of oatmeal and skim milk and fruit and veg, and I did everything. And I should have been the poster boy for the food guidelines. Instead, I was the one that they'd probably want to lock away in the attic and say, oh, no, he's not a good example. But I think I've met thousands of people since that also fell foul to the food guidelines. But anyway, up until age 45, I wasn't a specialist in obesity and diabetes, and that was the big turning point. I started to be qualified for that. I was an advanced personal trainer. I was taking people to the Olympics, training them to get to the Olympics. One was a type 1 diabetic, which is why I did the qualification, because I became really fascinated in it. So anyway, then I opened a practice, and I still believed in high carb, and I was getting nowhere. And the only people that were actually getting somewhere, when I asked them, what are you doing? They'd say, ignoring you. And they were doing a thing which they called either Atkins or low carb. They didn't say carnivore. They didn't say keto. And it took me 5 years to realize that I got it all wrong. So at age 50, I went low carb, and absolutely everything started to get better. And the more I did it, the more I thought, well, if removing a fair amount of carbs is good, why don't I go keto? So at 53, I went keto, and I got even better results, body composition, more energy, better skin. And then on my 55th birthday, I'd been trained by Sean Baker to be a carnivore coach. I thought I would do it for a short period of time. And here I am, nearly 6 years later, thinking it's the best thing I ever did, and coaching people and getting people off their type 2 diabetes medication, lowering their blood pressure, seeing body composition changes, reversing kidney disease, reversing fatty liver disease. I'm not doing it. I'm just guiding them. I'm just giving them the signpost. They're doing it. They're the people that's got to live it. They're the people that got to be called weird in a restaurant. They're the people that got to upset all their friends because they're not eating potatoes and bread and what's wrong with you, and going to the doctor and looking brilliant, being told they're going to die because they're following the carnivore diet. So it's I'm trying to be as quick as possible, but it's been a bit of a journey. I've met some fabulous people. I mean, both of you have been absolutely great. I mean, Casey, I can't speak highly enough of, really. I mean, absolutely amazing content, works really hard. Possibly we don't get the remuneration in reflection to how much work we put in, but we're not doing it for that. We're not beholden to the big pharma, big food, big ag. We're out there for the people. And I think that's the thing. When you see continual good results for people, doesn't matter if there's a study. By the way, you know, my bugbear is studies like the one about butter, which is absolutely ridiculous. There's no actual swaps taking place in that study, but anyway, we'll maybe get into that later. When you see these stupid studies that just deny what's actually in front of your face, it gets a little bit disheartening. So hopefully things like you're doing here, doing the, you know, the talks and getting people online to just answer questions is really good. We've got to get the message out there, not be angry, not be cross, not get sweary about vegans, vegetarians, because at least they're thinking about their health. They're trying to do something. They're misinformed a lot of the times. Same with the doctors, you know, same with the nurses. They're following orders. And it's from top down. It's big. It's the big people. It's the people behind the scenes that are. I'm not going to get too political, but you know, there's an agenda. There is an agenda, and you know, Goldman Sachs actually put it in writing that curing patients is not a good business model. You know, Gilead, you know, that hepatitis cure. They took $12 billion in the first year. That was so successful, but the next year they only took $4 billion. Right, it was still a lot of money, but all their shareholders said, no, this drug is too good. It's curing people. We don't want that. So it's out there that what we're saying is not tinfoil hat stuff. It's actually out there, public record. The pharmaceuticals do not want to get you well because it's not a good business model. And actually, it's not legal for their shareholders. Their shareholders want them to make the most profit possible. And the way they do that when you're in the pharmaceutical business is to keep you sick.
You only mentioned one example there, Stephen, but we saw that over the past, since 2020 at least, we've been seeing drugs that actually cure and work are removed. And among them, insulin. There are insulin shortages now. And so that's a whole different topic, very close to my heart. However, let's come to Casey. Casey, you also, like Stephen, you also started as a personal trainer, right?
Yeah, in fact, I was just thinking about this. Today would be my anniversary. This was the day that I started as a personal trainer. It was 18 years ago today, actually, at the time of this recording. I had studied architecture in college and thought that my career was going to go in that direction, but I had joined a gym and started watching the personal trainers and had been around gym culture for a while. And it looked fun. I didn't think it was going to be something that I would make into a career. It just looked like a good way to earn some money in the short term while I was studying. And I ended up getting a job as a trainer. And yeah, that was 18 years ago today. And my specialty when I was training with the big gym that I worked for was working with metabolic carts, which measure the way that people burn their calories and where they burn their calories from. So we could tell somebody what their baseline metabolic rate was. We could tell somebody what their VO2 max was. We could tell them how many of their calories, what percentage of their calories was coming from fat versus carbohydrates. And, you know, Stephen picked up on this pretty quickly. I'm a much slower learner than Stephen is. And so it took me many years to start to realize that, you know, you could really manipulate somebody's fat burning through their nutrition. If I wanted to be, you know, I was competing as a cyclist at the time and shoving, you know, endless amounts of carbohydrates down my throat because I needed to. I was burning a lot of sugar. But we learned over time that if you could teach yourself to tap into your fat stores, you wouldn't need to consume as many calories, consume as many carbohydrates, and you could manipulate that by changing your diet, reducing the carbohydrates in the diet, and increasing this weird word that I heard, which was healthy fat. All of a sudden, fat was like good for you, and you could eat avocados, and all of a sudden, olive oil was making it into my diet, and that was all very strange. And at the same time, this company was also making us do weight loss contests, and very similar to Stephen's experience. Like we would do these contests where we give people, you know, a big packet of information, 120 something pages of recipes and food lists, and people would head to the store so they could buy rutabagas and arrowroot powder and all these turnips and these weird ingredients that they then didn't know what to do with. And we'd put them on, 3-month, 2-month weight loss contests. And pretty much nobody succeeded. And even the compliance percentage of people that would start one of these contests that would actually like end the contest, and even regardless of whether they lost weight or gained weight, would even step on the scale, was somewhere around 15% across the company that I was working for. So it's just a failure. And we hated it. As trainers, we had to do it every few months. We had to recruit new people on 100% commission. And it just was terrible. We didn't like it. And, we had a contest where I had a guy, I could tell by his diet that he was, he's kind of guy that would like wake up in the middle of the night and eat a bowl of cereal, and had about 25, 30 pounds to lose. And I just like at the time at least knew that, oh, your diet just needs a little bit more protein and fat. Just start there, which he did. And he came back a few days later and said, hey, I just lost like 3 pounds in 3 days. What's this keto stuff? And that was probably the last day I ever listened to music in my car. That kicked me down this kind of journey of learning about what a ketogenic diet was. I had become certified as a nutrition coach, and my manual is right here. And in this giant manual that's several hundred pages long, there is exactly one sentence that talks about ketosis. It basically just says when the body burns fat, it will produce ketones, and this is called a state of ketosis. And in all of the rest of the book, nothing else is referenced beside that one sentence. And so I had to go out and learn some of this stuff and what it was and why it worked. And so podcasts and books and all that stuff. And if you're in the low carbohydrate or keto space long enough, you start to hear about this subset of people who are not eating any carbohydrates. They're eating only meat. And I was introduced to the carnivore diet through Dr. Sean Baker on the Joe Rogan podcast. I thought it was absolutely ridiculous. It was the stupidest thing I'd ever heard. I ended up turning the episode off halfway through. And it wasn't until last year, and this is several years after like Stephen being certified with his company, that I actually decided like I should go back and listen to that whole episode from like 2017, 2018. But yeah, I started my carnivore journey in April of 2019. And within a few weeks, my brain was just working differently. Anxiety that I didn't know that I had cleared up, and I could think more clearly, and stressful things would happen. A year later, my wife and I, who both work for the same company, both lost our jobs in the pandemic, and we had to be pragmatic and figure out what to do. So we started a company in 2020. And again, my energy, my ability to deal with stress and to think through things was so much better on carnivore. So that's going to be 6 years coming up here that I've been primarily on a stricter version of a carnivore diet. And yeah, it's been a wonderful journey. And just like Stephen said, like the laundry list of things that you can help people with is just absolutely staggering. And yeah, Stephen also made a really good point that, we're very fortunate that we're, out there coaching people, and we do get to make a little bit of money doing this. So I don't think any of us are going to go buy a yacht anytime soon, but the passion, like I'm passionate about a lot of things in my life, like my favorite professional hockey team and Formula One races. And like, I'm passionate about that, but my podcast is about health and nutrition and carnivore diets. And this is the stuff that gets, I think, all of us so worked up and excited and passionate that we're willing to create tons of content and get this message out there. So that's been my journey so far.
So much in common. You two have a lot in common. But I think there is one more thing that's in common. You both have a deeper personal story that also motivates you or motivated you to be a healthier version of yourself. You lost your parents, Stephen. You lost both of your parents to ill health, and Casey, I think you also lost your mother. That, from what I've heard from you mentioned before. Can we mention that, because I think that's got to be something that gives you that motivation from within. Because you're right, we're not doing this for the money. I mean, I'm doing this podcast, and if I didn't have another business covering this business expenses, I'm doing this for the money. This podcast take an awful lot of time, and I'm doing it free, like you, Casey. So we're doing it because something inside us from within is motivating us to give to people, to help people. Who's got to go first?
Go ahead, Stephen.
Oh, I was being polite and waiting for Casey. Yes, yeah, I lost both my parents and a girlfriend actually to breast cancer. So my mother died of colon cancer, even though she'd followed all the guidelines and all the things that apparently stop you getting colon cancer she was doing, and all the things that give you colon cancer she wasn't doing. She wasn't having red meat, she wasn't having saturated fat. She was fruit and veg. She fell for the whole thing, and then she got colon cancer. And my dad died of cancer of the spine, and my girlfriend died of breast cancer. And yeah, by 23, that's quite a lot of loss. I'd lost my hearing as well, so that was quite bad. I got captions on now. I lip read. I've got hearing aids, so that's been one of the things actually that's been interesting. My hearing, my actual empirical data about my hearing, it has actually improved the first time in the last 3 or 4 years after 35 years of it continually declining, getting worse and worse and worse. And the only thing that's different is carnivore. So I think that's I do take stem enhance, the Soror thing, by the way. So that's full transparency. Yeah, I would say I didn't realize that that was part of the motivation, but I do now. I mean, realize that that's definitely part of it, because certainly in the last year, I thought to myself, wow, if I knew then what I know now, well, definitely my parents would have lived a lot longer. And also they wouldn't have had the stress and strain. My mother used to get panic attacks every time she was having chemotherapy, radiation, losing her hair, losing her teeth. I know it's slightly better now, but it's not that much better. So her quality of life was really poor. I'm now 60, so I have got friends that have got prostate cancer, testicular cancer, who don't follow this way of eating, and it's very hard to hear what they're doing and what they're undergoing when you know that there's things that they could do with their diet, which definitely make things a lot easier. And so yes, I think it motivates me, but I'm not going to use that as a thing. We've all got problems, and we just don't all talk about them because that's not what we do. But it gives you an understanding. And if anyone does accuse me of being glib, wow, you're saying this about cancer, but what about the doctors? And I'm like, yeah, I've lived it, mate. I have lived it. And I tell you what, when your family gets something, you learn about it. And that's what I did. I learned about it. Sadly, every book, everything I read, because in the old days I didn't have the internet, I'd go and get a book. All the oncology was all, which I now know, was all big pharma driven. It wasn't research. It wasn't actually going to help. What gives you cancer? Radiation. What do we treat cancer with? Radiation. Now, I know that's really a sort of obvious sort of sentence, but yeah, surely that doesn't make any sense. And then you find out anyway. Yeah, don't want to get too much into that, but yes, you're right. It does make a big difference, definitely.
It makes our resolve stronger, I think. Certainly, having lived through for health or our families, so it just makes you stronger and more driven.
Yeah, I mean those ridges, you cannot climb a smooth mountain. All right, you need those difficulties to be able to get a foothold and move yourself up and get to the peak. Anyone that has a charmed life, that don't have any adversity, when they do encounter adversity, they're clueless. They have no idea. And this is part of the problem with the people that run the country. When you've got bucket loads of money, or you pretend you haven't, like Bill Gates, for instance, whose dad was a billionaire, but apparently he started a business from a garage. What load of rubbish. If you've given everything and you've not had to fight for anything, then you haven't got a clue about human life. You haven't got any lived experience to back up. And this is, possibly going off the carnivore diet, but it is also part of what we're doing with the carnivore diet, because there's many people that don't seem to realize the danger of lab-grown meat and farmers losing their land. It's really important to understand that actually it isn't just about the way we eat. It's about the way we're being manipulated to eat the wrong way. And like I say, to be kept sick, to be kept fragile.
Yeah, Stephen and I really do have a lot in common. My mom was diagnosed when she was in her late 30s with breast cancer, and Yeah, it's just like you're told you have cancer, and within like a day or two you're whisked away into surgery, and you start chemo the next week, and radiation starts soon after that. And my parents did a good job shielding us kids from a lot of what she was going through, but we still got to see what the treatments in particular were doing to her. And she was gone by the time she was 46. And thinking that I'm 41 now, and to think that she was already 2 years 3 years into the course of her disease and was gone a few years away from where I am, it's crazy. And I've told this story a lot, but I have very distinct memories of going to visit her while she was getting her chemotherapy treatments and bringing her giant hot cider drinks that were pumped with caramel. It's just like sugar water with added sugar, because it was her favorite treat, or juice and all this stuff we would bring her during her treatments because that was her favorite thing. And we changed our diets as well, and we wanted to eat a little bit better during the time, so we switched to skim milk, and we started eating wheat bread. And there's always desserts and red vines in the house. And of course, knowing what we know now about cancer, that was absolutely the worst thing we could have done. And I'm actually I've been listening to the book Ravenous by Sam Apple, who talks about Otto Warburg in Germany. And to think like what we know now about cancer is actually something we've known for a very, very long time, almost 100 years, that cancer feeds off of sugar. And the worst thing you can do is feed the cancer with more and more sugar, which is exactly what we're doing in my mom's case. And so, yeah, it's like Stephen said, it's not something I think about every day, but it's definitely something that adds fuel to the fire to at least want to get out and share this message with others.
What can people eat on a carnivore diet? Now, here, because there are different people do different things, right? And some have dairy, some don't have dairy, and some do very well with dairy actually, but some don't. And so what is your definition, Stephen, of the carnivore diet?
Right, okay. I just want to quickly go back on the cancer thing, because just quickly, when they scan for cancer, they don't scan for cancer. They scan for glucose metabolism, so the CT scan is looking at that. So, right. What can you eat on carnivore? Well, it depends. You see, it depends on what you're doing it for, what your history is. I certainly would say if you come from a low, I don't like the word calorie, but let's say a nutrient deficient way of eating, doing a deficit, for instance, you're not just doing a deficit of calories, you're doing a deficit of micronutrients and electrolytes and salts and the fats you need. So you really, need to be careful when you start eating this way, because it's so nutrient dense. And obviously there's fats that maybe your gallbladder can't keep up with, your stomach acid can't work with. So I would always say do a small transition, a gradual transition to going carnivore. Just take bits out. Bread, potatoes normally is the first thing. Or if you've been vegan, vegetarian, add a little bit of what you find palatable, maybe, even something lean like chicken. I'm not saying that's the way to go for everybody, because if you're an all or nothing person, so if I'm coaching someone and they say, I used to smoke, and then one day I thought, I'm not smoking anymore, and I just stopped, right? They're not going to do a slow transition. So you just have to say, okay, you need to go straight into this because that's your personality type. But you might have some diarrhea, you might have some constipation, you might have some sort of keto flu-like things. So you can eat anything. You can eat beef, you can eat lamb, you can eat pork, you can eat poultry, so you've got chicken, duck, you've got turkey and quail, and you've got game stuff like venison and bison and elk and rabbit and goose and salmon and mackerel and sardines, herring, trout, shrimp, crab, lobster, scallops, oysters, clams, Easter eggs, chicken eggs, duck eggs, quail eggs, cheese, gouda, cream, ghee, butter, yogurt, sour cream, bone broth. But, there's no variety.
Yeah. Hey, Casey, what sort of carnivore do you do, or do you recommend to your clients, or does it depend on what they're like?
Yes.
Well, it definitely depends. The way Stephen defined it, I think, is great. I'll tell people like, if you had like a cold kind of swimming pool, you've got the type of person that would be in the shallow end, would wade in a little bit more slowly to get used to it. And you'd also have the person that would want to go over to the diving board and jump right in and get it over with. So everybody's a little bit different as far as that transition. So I thought that was really well explained. And in my opinion, I guess I just like the definition of a hyper carnivore in nature consumes at least 75% of their calories from animal products. I think of a carnivore diet in that way. I know a lot of people think that's a little bit too lenient. But I also I do get a little more annoyed when you go to a carnivore page on a social media group and somebody has a few onions in a picture or a slice of avocado, and people jump all over them and say, "Oh, that's not carnivore." Like, well, obviously it's a plant source, but yeah, I go by that definition. I tend to eat a little bit more on the strict side. I am definitely a huge fan of moderation for the people who can do it. And if you are a moderator, that is wonderful. And I'm very jealous. I've learned over my life that I am absolutely not a moderator. The last few times that I've ever cheated, my anxiety comes back and I have cravings, and they are really annoying. They're not the worst in the world, but I will crave really crappy food. It happens if I even have, pieces of fruit. I'll have something, sweet, and it will taste good, even if it's like in season or growing in my neighborhood. But I'll notice 20 or 30 minutes later that I am craving more sugar, and I'm not craving more fruit at that point. I'm craving candy bars and a pie and a soda or fast food or whatever nonsense that I normally don't have. So I think everybody's a little different as far as the level of carnivore, if you want to call it that. But I like the definition to be a little bit more open, so it can be a little bit more exclusive to all kinds of people. All of the foods that Stephen listed were amazing, and I agree. I think anybody can just go for whatever protein sources, animal food sources that they can afford, that taste good to them. I've noticed that most people naturally gravitate over time towards beef, things like eggs, other ruminant animals, because those tend to be a little bit more nutrient dense. So I don't really need to worry too much about what somebody is eating when they're getting started. I know eventually they're going to end up that way anyway. But yeah, that's how I like to define it. So again, it's more inclusive for people. And then I just tell people, just decide what things are good for you, what things make you have cravings. I love this point that Amy Berger made at the last health conference I was at, the COSI conference in Las Vegas in 2025. Amy Berger from To It Nutrition on stage said, look, the point of a ketogenic diet, a carnivore diet, whatever diet you're doing, the point of this is to make your life better. The point of this is not to stress out over the things you can eat or not eat. This is about enjoying your life. Like if you enjoy certain things and they make you happy and you don't suffer, then do that. Like, that's great. That's the way we need to think about it. And I thought that was a wonderful point to say that, like, it's yeah, if you need to be more on the strict side like myself, that's great. Other people don't have to do that. And yeah, like Stephen, I think most of us could benefit from eating more proteins, more fats in its most nutrient dense form, which again, you're going to find a majority of your foods are going to be found in the animal kingdom.
From some commonly asked questions, here you go. I have a list here. Let's start with the first one. Can I cook with spices or herbs?
Yeah, if you can tolerate them, absolutely. I mean, without giving you too much information, there are taste sensors at the end of your body as you get rid of stuff, which is why for some people it can be a little bit unpleasant when you have a curry, for instance, and that is your body saying that was not right. You shouldn't really be putting that in at the front end. I think it really does depend on the person. Just going back to what Casey said about variety and how strict we are. If someone's got an autoimmune condition, it sort of fits to be quite strict, because it then helps to be forensic about what's causing the problem. So herbs and spices, yeah, I think if that's going to make you stay on carnivore, then go for it. But if it's going to make you not progress in the area you want to be therapeutic in, I don't know, healing your gut, then obviously you've got to consider whether that's a problem. And the only way you'll ever find out is by doing elimination, if it is food. So that's a very broad question. But in general, I would say if you're fit and healthy and you don't have gut issues, and it's a game changer for you, I'd rather you have herbs and spices than not go carnivore and stick to standard American or vegan or vegetarian or low fat or whatever. I think it's it's definitely something you can tolerate.
Would you add anything else to it, Casey?
Hard to add anything to that. That was a really great explanation. I think it all comes down to what Stephen said, and the reason why most of us in the carnivore space do recommend some period of time where you are a little bit more strict. Maybe eliminating dairy, which can be problematic for some people, or eliminating spices. You may bring them back and find that they don't affect you at all. And you may bring them back and find that they can affect you. The thing about any plant foods is there's always a question. Is this going to affect me? Maybe not. I don't know. But there is always a question. If you want to find out, I thought Stephen explained it excellently. If you want to be forensic about it, and you need to eliminate everything and bring back slowly and see how it affects you and be honest with yourself. I do notice that also that tastes do change quite a bit. And I notice that a lot of people naturally gravitate away from lots of spices and maybe gravitate more towards just simple salt, maybe a little bit of pepper, that kind of thing. And they tend to find the flavors of the foods they're eating are just so much better anyway. They don't really want to cover it up with more spices. But yeah, everybody's going to be a little bit different that way.
Yeah, that's a great point, Casey, actually, about covering up the taste, because the less spice you have and the less herbs, you can actually taste what you're eating and like, wow, this duck is amazing. You can actually really get to it. I think the next question, if we have Casey answer first, because it's, I think it's a bit unfair. I get first dibs on everything. So yeah, you answer the next one, Casey, first.
I was going to direct on to Casey because it's something I really wanted Casey's opinion on. Right, Casey, people often ask, well, can I still have my morning coffee? No. Casey, when I first bumped into Casey, we saw each other from a distance, and it was at a conference in San Diego. And Casey had a large cup of coffee in his hands, and he was literally running to me, and we hugged each other so tight. He spilled his coffee, not on me. Did you spill on yourself? Where did you spill the coffee?
I thought I spilled it on you.
No, it wasn't. You didn't spill it on me.
I thought I spilled it on you. Okay.
However, Casey, the carnivore coach, was actually drinking coffee. So my question is about coffee. I know Casey drinks coffee. So what do you say to your clients when they ask this specific question? Because they ask it all the time. Can I have coffee? Or tea, for that matter?
Yep, so Great question. I just want to point out that normally when you say you bump into somebody, you don't mean quite literally, where I did bump into you quite literally. And I thought I remember spilling the coffee on you. But yeah, it's going to be the same answer. It's going to be the same answer as far as the spices go. For some people, coffee can be problematic. For me personally, I have had times where I've included it in my diet. I've had times where I've taken it out of my diet. I don't notice much one way or another. I don't think I'm very caffeine sensitive. For me, it's something that I enjoy. And it's also something that I'm making additions to that seem to help me. So for example, I still do kind of like a bulletproof style coffee in the morning where I'm adding a little bit of butter. I'm adding a little bit of MCT oil. I'm adding salt also that cuts through the bitterness. And those to me kind of make a nice kind of savory, the warm drink in the morning that helps me be alert and awake for my clients. And I start, at 6 a.m. training. And so for me personally, it's something I include. It's definitely not where I'm going to plant my flag and say that this is the hill I'm going to die on. And if you're drinking coffee, you're not a carnivore. I think it's very similar to the spices thing. And if you want to know whether it's affecting you, you should cut it out and see, and just be honest with yourself. And you might find that having coffee is just fine. And you might find that maybe you're a little sensitive to it and you should cut it out. Again, the point is to find a diet that's enjoyable for you and something that you can maintain and sustain that is making your life better, not making your life absolutely miserable.
Yeah, the same for tea, right? We can say the same for tea.
Yeah, I forgot that you asked about the tea. Yeah, exactly the same. Some people can be really sensitive to it and they might need to remove it to see, but other people can handle it just fine. So again, I'm not going to go around telling people that they can't have coffee or tea on a carnivore diet. Yeah, very similar to the spices. The best way to know is to cut it out for a time, maybe 3 or 4 weeks, and then bring it back in and be really honest with yourself about, what the effects are, if it's throwing you off or if it's something that's adding enjoyment to your life.
Yeah, there's a couple. That's a brilliant answer, Casey. So, a couple of bits. Can I just add, if that's okay? One thing Casey mentioned there, and it's a bugbear of mine when people say you can't have that, it's not carnivore. Okay, well, you can't have water. Water's not carnivore. It's not an animal, is it? You know, it's ridiculous. It's really ridiculous when people say that. And coffee isn't like 80-90% water, isn't it? So I think I would have given you a different answer last year than now. And that's because I actually had an issue with the coffee. But there's two things really. Firstly, when you roast something, you get acrylamides, and a coffee can cause joint pain. And I wasn't getting any joint pain, and I didn't really believe that that was a possibility. Then in my five-side football, when I'm 60. By the way, when I was 23, I was told I'd been in a wheelchair by the time I was 50 because I had such a bad back, and I've shown an X-ray. It was really convincing. Here I am at 60, still playing five-side soccer. Anyway, right. And I started to feel that my football boots were too tight, and my knees were aching, and I did the typical thing. Well, I am 60. I am going to get aches and pains. And then I thought, well, let's test the Anthony Chaffee theory about coffee and joint pain. So I dropped the coffee and the pains went. And my football boots, or soccer boots, as you say in America, they could fit. All of a sudden, they could fit again. So obviously it was inflaming me, and that's down to the roasting process. So if someone likes a hot drink and coffee they take out and they see their joint pain decrease, they can still have a hot drink because tea isn't roasted, it's steeped. So it's a different process. So you don't get the acrylamides. The second thing is, and I was on Dr. Abbs's school and he did a thing about teeth whitening, and I did at home teeth whitening, and I then had coffee and it ruined the effects. So if you want to do teeth whitening, it is a really good thing to do because it stops you wanting or having coffee, because you're going to mess up all that effort. So that's just an aside. I think if you're, you know, I'm not particularly vain. I don't like seeing myself, but I think if we're doing this, we need to look good. And I was noticing that my teeth were stained from the coffee. So I did that. And, you know, they've been ruined, my teeth, by my high carb diet from years ago. I mean, I had every tooth was filled by the time I was like 20. So I've got bad teeth, and I'm English, so obviously I'm going to anyway. But I think that's one of the things. You want to look and feel good, and you know, if you notice, if you're looking at yourself and you feel, well, where can I improve? That could be an area as well. I know it's a little bit of an aside, but I'm definitely not one of these where I say you can't have coffee because it's not carnivore, because that's not understanding the person. What if that person has mental health problems, and the only time they ever feel great is first thing in the morning, and their ritual is having a coffee, watching the sun come up? That is not the same experience for someone when you've got a glass of water. All right. Because that might be their thing. Well, I would never take that thing away. You know, I would give them the informed decision. Now, let's say they said that and my joints ache. I say, well, maybe, you know, take the coffee out, try tea. But that's the problem with, I'm not knocking what you're doing with the questions. The questions are very broad, but I want listeners to know that there's no hard and fast rules. You know, you've got to tune it to you and your situation. So if Casey or myself say something and you think, oh, well, that means I'm not going to do that. Well, we've done you a disservice, because it could be the thing that's different. You know, what was it? Casey mentioned avocado. You know, I don't eat avocado, but my wife does, because she likes the fats from avocado, and it's a different way of getting some fats in. So, you know, if do what works, listen to your body, you know, and don't worry about zealots. And, you know, if you go online and someone is nasty to you, just scroll on. Don't worry about it. Don't get into a big argument. You don't need to do that. Just do what works for you. Seriously, they don't know you from Adam. They do not know your situation. So if you go online and innocently put a picture up and you've got some onions on there or whatever it is, and someone says, oh, you know, you shouldn't be in the group, that's an onion. Just I would actually just ignore it. I wouldn't even give them the oxygen to, you know, put yourself out. I would just move on. Just enjoy yourself.
Yeah, that's wise advice. Okay, these are actually from groups, carnivore groups.
Yeah,
yes. primarily from Facebook, but a couple are from Instagram. So there's another one. Someone was saying, surely eating all those sticks of butter, because in America, Casey, our butter doesn't come in sticks, but in America, it actually comes in individual kind of sticks, smaller size sticks. So eating all those sticks of butter cannot be healthy. Well, again, that's a very broad, right? I mean, if you have a lot of fat to lose, I always tell people why. I actually had Zoe Harcombe on my channel. She was talking about butter munching as well. And she said, look, some people may need it, but some people absolutely do not need it. Especially if they are eating a carnivore like meat-based diet, because they are already getting sufficient fat from the diet itself, and they already have tons of body fat to lose. So where do you stand on butter munching?
That's a great question. I love the idea of eating sticks of butter denotes that somebody would grab a stick of butter and just like eat the whole thing in one sitting, which I've never seen anybody really do. I know people take bites out of butter from time to time, and I certainly use butter. It's one of my primary fats in my diet as well. But when you actually see the quantities that most people on a carnivore diet are eating of things like butter, it's actually quite a low percentage. You need to get nutrients from things like red meat, and I'm talking primarily like cows. Butter has a lot of great things in it, but you can't really just live on butter alone without a protein source. So again, when I hear people make the association of a carnivore diet or a ketogenic diet is melting sticks of butter in coffee, or eating plates of bacon, like, yeah, like you can, but I don't ever see anybody really doing that. So I don't think it's a huge issue for people. I think those saturated fats that have been demonized for so long, the fats that come with animal products, things like butter have just been demonized. And we have this idea that, the fat's going to get into our body and clog up our arteries. It's not true. It's not how it happens. It's just everybody has that idea in their heads. So again, on a practical level, I don't see many people having a problem with that. Your question also is related to what somebody's goals are and whether they should be intaking excessive amounts of fat, adding fat to their diet if they have the fat to lose. And I think the great thing about adding fat to somebody's diet, especially in the beginning, is the same kind of thing that I learned with using those metabolic carts, is if you're eating primarily fat and you are taking out carbohydrates, your body is going to learn how to use fat as a fuel source and will shift its metabolism from a carbohydrate metabolism over to a fat metabolism. So when somebody's starting, I encourage them to add as much fat as they want. That's chomping on butter or adding excessive amounts of butter to their coffee, like go for it, whatever tastes good to you. But over time, especially if somebody wants to lose weight and they're stalled, they're not getting the fat loss results they want, then that might be a time to re-examine, okay, how much fat are you consuming versus how much fat you already have stored on the body that you could be burning once the body knows that it's a fuel source. So yeah, again, just like Steven's done such a great job explaining, it's very individual. It's going to be different for everybody, but it's definitely something that we can diagnose on somebody depending on their goals and depending what their intake is. But it's very rare that I see that somebody is over consuming fats to the extent that it is becoming a problem. It's not something that I see all the time. So yeah, I don't think it's a huge problem.
No, it's not really. It's quite fashionable, isn't it, to see people on online in certain situations where they're chomping on some butter. But I think my biggest fear is under eating when people come to this way of eating. So I think if it's their way of getting some extra fat in when they first start, and they can cope with it, I think that's the thing. It's quite a handy tool. It's like if you've got beef and you've got a ribeye, let's say you're lucky enough to have a ribeye, and you feel like, well, this is not fatty enough, although there is plenty of fat in a ribeye. Adding a bit of butter on top of that can make it taste really nice as well. So I don't see the big problem. I'm the same as Casey. I don't see or hear or coach anyone that says I'm just chomping butter left, right, and center. But I think adding it to meals or just every so often as a little bite was not a problem.
Well, carnivore is expensive is the next one. I cannot tell you how many times I read that over and over again. Carnivore is expensive.
Well, it isn't. You can have ground beef. You can have eggs. You can get, if you get things like chicken hearts or that's really, really cheap. The cheapest form of meat is stuff that people don't want to eat. You can get shin beef, so people don't want that. You can get braising steak, we call it in the UK, which if you slow cook is nearly as good as a ribeye, nearly, but it's about half to a third of the price. Eggs are getting more expensive. You don't need so many utilities in the kitchen. You don't need so much stuff. You don't need lots of pots and pans. You don't need lots of processing. You don't throw away lots of stuff that you didn't eat. There's not food waste. I mean, 84% of the world's food waste is plant material. You need less cleaning materials. There's less time doing that. It's so much easier, and you're not getting the Cokes and crisps and candies and all the other things. All these things really do rack up, and you can definitely do carnivore on a budget. Even things like sausages, which are, not the greatest thing in the world, but they're still better than you have in cereal. So if you had sausage and egg in the morning, or bacon and eggs in the morning, that's better than cereal. Cereal is quite expensive. I don't know what it is in America, but it's still expensive. And then you've got the milk on top of that, and oh boy, and you're not eating enough, and by 11 o'clock you're hungry again, so you eat again. That's another thing. You don't eat so often. You don't have to keep changing your clothes for bigger sizes, so there's lots of sort of hidden savings as well. You don't have to cook things for so long. You can flash fry a steak. Air fryer makes things much cheaper when it comes to the use of energy to cook things. Like I say, no processing makes a big difference, and then you're not impacting the environment as well. So most of my beef is quite local, whereas if I was to go and make a fruit salad, my grapes would come from Spain. I've done a fruit salad for years, but anyway, oranges would come from Portugal. They'd come from all over the world. I mean, it depends how you look at. It does depend how you look at things. I mean, I remember when Greta came out with all the stuff that, and she was getting on a train, and she had her dinner, all her food on the table, all wrapped in plastic, by the way. And I was able to zoom into the picture and see where every single piece of food had come from. That table had 2.5 times around the world air miles.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to put her food for that day on that table, on that train, because it was all in plastic and it was all from all over the world. Now, so that's a cost as well, isn't it? It's a cost to the planet. So anyway, going back to the basics, of a budget, you can do carnivore on a budget without a shadow of a doubt. And I have done that. And I used to do videos, what I eat in a day, and I do what I eat in a day when, I've got a bit of money, what I eat in a day when I haven't, just to show the difference. And yeah, the budget week was great. I mean, you really can find bargains out there. Ground beef is absolutely one of the top bargains, if you, especially the fattier type, because it's allegedly not the not the ones they want to push out. So it tends to be cheaper. So,
Yeah, and also the frequency of eating. You're not eating like snacks in between meals. I mean, most people will be eating 3 meals.
Yep.
You're not having snacks in between. So is that
Yeah.
anything to add to that, Casey?
No, it's perfectly said. One of the great things about a carnivore diet is it tends to become very simple for people, which I really enjoy. I've really gotten down my ability to cook a steak really well. I get a perfect crust on it. I know exactly how much I typically will eat. So it's about 1.5 pounds of red meat that I can eat. And yesterday's a great example. I had about 1 pound and 6 ounces, 8 ounces of steak. And I had a dozen eggs. One time I had all of that for dinner. And so, yes, the price of eggs is going up. I'm eating steak, not ground beef. And the total cost of that meal is still less than $20 easily. And that kept me full for 24 hours. I feel great. That is a very, very inexpensive way of eating. And like Steven said, like you can be very pragmatic and find deals. In fact, just recently I found a warehouse not too far away from me that sells the entire roll of steak. So rather than buy the individual steaks for about $10, $11 a pound, I can buy the entire roll of a steak for about $6 or $7 a pound. And so I will just buy the whole thing. I'll slice it up as thick as I want. I don't trim off the fat the way that a normal grocery store would. And so these are exactly the way I like them. I use a vacuum sealer and seal all of them and put them in the freezer where they can last indefinitely. And then I'll just sous vide them in a batch. And when I want one, I pull one out. I finish it on a particular grill that puts that really nice char on my steak. And that's very inexpensive. This really does not cost that much money when you think how much it costs even just to get fast food, one meal of fast food around here, let alone all the other things that Steven mentioned, like all the things you need in the kitchen, the food waste. Like, of course, every single week I used to take out my garbage and my recycling at the same time. I take out my garbage once a month now. I take out my recycling every single week. You're just not throwing things away at the end of the week. You're eating what you have, and you could be resourceful. I will always scan the section of the grocery store that has meat that's about to, go past the date. You can get that on a discount. I'll vacuum seal that and eat that when I want as well. So there's lots of ways that you can do this. And just like Steven said, you can go to the grocery store and buy the least expensive ground beef and buy a dozen eggs, and it's not going to break the bank, and it would be a vastly better different than any of the crap that you can get at most stores or what most people do by like going to eat out or Grubhub everything. So yeah, a carnivore diet does not need to be expensive. I just, like I said before, I always recommend that people eat whatever meat sounds good to them and whatever they can afford. Don't let that be a barrier to entry.
So Casey, how do you get that perfect crust then?
Oh man. So have you ever watched the videos of Sean Baker where he'll play a video as he's eating his steak?
Yeah.
Okay. So I kept seeing all those videos, and after a while I was like, I want to learn exactly what he does to cook a steak. And so I ended up going onto his YouTube. He's actually made a video where he shows how he makes a steak, and he has a particular grill. It's not too big. It runs on propane. I keep it in the backyard next to my smoker, and it shoots out fire from the top and then has adjustable kind of shelves. And so basically you turn this thing on, flames shoot out of it. It gets super hot, about 1500 degrees. And then I just pull a tray out. I put my steak on it. I push it in about 90 seconds on one side, pull it out, flip it once, 90 seconds on the other side. And it's got a perfect little crust to it. The brands that Dr. Baker promotes, they're quite expensive. Like one of them was $1,000. Another one was $2,000. I found one on Amazon that's kind of like a replica. It's not the same brand, but it was like $150. And so I thought like, oh, I'll give this a try. I've had it for over a year and I use it every single day, and it's absolutely amazing. I get better than steakhouse quality steak every single night that I want for that great price. So that's my method. I'll be curious to hear how you make yours.
Well, I don't, and that because I struggle, so that I will take that up, because that's the machinery there is costing like 50 cents a day if you've had it for a year, and it was $150. So that's pretty cheap if you end up with restaurant quality steak. So it's worth it, isn't it?
In fact,
pretty great. Yeah, no complaints.
Yeah,
I would say better than restaurant quality. I don't enjoy restaurant meals anymore because my husband's the same. We eat better at home.
Yes. Well, you know what I mean. It's like prepared by a chef, but you do it yourself.
Next
100%.
one. Are you both ready for it? That's a common one. Fiber. How do you feed your gut bacteria if you're not eating any fiber?
Okay. Well, I made someone laugh yesterday. We had a meeting, and they said about your stool. Fiber makes your stool bigger, and I said, yeah, well, there's a very small hole that stool's got to go through. You really want to make it bigger? Is that that's but the people that push fiber are also those that tell you that you shouldn't eat saturated fat. Okay, stick with this because it makes total sense. So what do they say fiber is good for? They say fiber is very good because it goes into your colon and it feeds the bacteria, and then you make short chain fatty acids. That's making saturated fat. So guys that are pushing fiber, get your story right. You either think saturated fat is bad or you think it's good. Because if you think it's good, then you've got to let us have our saturated fat from our food. But if you think it's bad, you can't have your fiber because fiber makes saturated fat, and that's the big thing you push. So what is fiber? Well, it's indigestible. So if I said to Casey, right, I've got this thing that you can't digest, can you just eat it for me? He would go, you're an idiot, Stephen. Why are you telling me to eat a shoe or a chair or something like that? Right. Now, we don't want lots of sugars either. So what is fiber? It's a polysaccharide that's indigestible. So if I then said to Casey, right, I've got this thing, it's a load of sugar that you can't digest. Do you want that? He would be like, there's nothing in this deal that sounds good to me. Nothing. So that's fiber in a nutshell, really. One of the biggest problems I had when I was doing the diabetic clinic, where every single day, was people would say, "Well, fiber's good, isn't it? It slows down your spikes." Which is true. It does, but it doesn't stop the concentration of blood sugar staying around for longer. It just masks the problem. So it's all about concentration of sugar in your blood. Spikes don't help, troughs don't help, but if you elevate your blood sugar and then there's something that's keeping it elevated, maybe a little bit under, but still keeping it elevated and around for longer, that's not great either, because that means your insulin is elevated. There's absolutely nothing in fiber that's beneficial. Absolutely nothing. Why do we need to poop more? Why do we need bigger stools? Why do we need to speed up transit time? It's ridiculous. Sorry, I'm sounding like I'm ranting, but I cannot see the point of it. Cannot see the point.
Stephen, I just wanted to add that what you just explained, that so fiber is actually converted to short chain, I believe, fatty acids.
Yeah.
This is exactly what happens in herbivore animals, by the way. So monkeys also eat tons of plant foods, but they are actually converting it to fatty acids. So if you're taking your fat from your diet, and
why do you need it?
What does it get? Why do you need to eat the fiber?
And also, because I mean, if you go back to butter, where does the word butter come from? Butyrate. Well, actually, butyrate is the fat we want, and that's what they're trying to make out of fiber. Well, forget all that stuff. Just eat some butter.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's very well said. I used to have, in all of my bathrooms, I used to have either a magazine or a book next to the toilet, because I would go and sit down and use the bathroom, and inevitably I'd be there for a while and be productive and read. And I quickly learned on Carnivore that I don't need to keep books and magazines there, because I'm not going to be in the bathroom very long. And I challenge a lot of people to actually go to Google and search. Just type in, like, who is a low fiber diet recommended for? And sure enough, you're going to get this list of all kinds of digestive issues: IBS, IBD, diverticulitis, diverticulosis, Crohn's disease. If a low fiber diet is used to treat all of these digestive disorders, what does that tell you? Right? Like Stephen said, it's completely unnecessary. You don't need it. I think it causes more problems than it helps.
And also gluten-free diet. So, why not try carnivore if you're suffering? Right. Are you ready for the next one? Okay. So aren't you missing out on nutrients if you're just eating meat? I'll tell you what I tell my clients. So I tell them, meat isn't just protein, because that's what people think of meat, right? Meat, protein, and that's all. They forget all the other micronutrients in meat. People don't even think of those, right? So how would you answer that? So what happened? Aren't you short of vitamins if you're just eating meat, or minerals?
It sure seems that way, because no worries. We're told that all the nutrients come from, vegetables and all kinds of different plants. We're told we need a variety and lots of different things. And it's just that the nutrients that come in plants are not in a form that's really available to us as human beings. Our digestion has diverted. You mentioned, monkeys and chimpanzees, who we evolved from. We don't have similar digestive systems to them. We chose a different strategy. Even though we are very similar, our digestive system is not that similar. And when you're mentioning those animals that can take a high amount of cellulose and plant matter and be able to transform it into high quality proteins and fats, we need to have those animals do the conversion for us, because we gave up a lot of the digestive abilities to do that for ourselves. So there's nothing in animals, especially ruminant animals like beef, there's nothing that we lack when we consume that, and there's no other questionable things that we're gaining by eating that material. I really like the way that the author Jane Reese Buxton sets it up in The Great Plant-Based Con, where one chapter is all about the the nutrients that you miss out on if you're eating a vegan diet, and it's a very long list. And the next chapter is all about all the things that you build up too much of, all the anti-nutrients that come from plants that we're not well set up to detoxify. And so, yeah, a simple answer is just everything that you can find as far as nutrients are available in animal foods, in particular ruminant animals who are set up to make those conversions for us. And we're also not risking taking in anti-nutrients by eating animal products as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm glad you went first, because they're all great points. If you want to get into the nitty gritty of some of the things, B12, vitamin B12, you don't get that in plants, right? So if you're a vegan, you have to supplement with that. You might say, well, I've been vegan for quite a while and I've not had to supplement. I'm okay. Well, that's because it's stored for years. But there will be a point where you need more B12. Heme iron. You don't get heme iron in plants, but you get it in a carnivore diet. And many people will say, well, what about the plant version of heme iron, non-heme iron? Right, okay. Well, you can convert non-heme iron. There's a thing called vitamin C ferroreductase, which needs a ton load of vitamin C to be able to convert non-heme iron to heme iron. That's why you need vitamin C when you're vegetarian or vegan. You don't need it on this way of eating because we don't need that conversion factor. DHA, EPA, we get that without conversion being needed. In the plant kingdom, it's an 18 carbon molecule when that needs to be converted. Vitamin A is beta carotene. It's not vitamin A. It's not the bioavailable form. So although I've answered it by turning it on its head, the vegan vegetarian diet is categorically, definitely devoid of certain vitamins and minerals and nutrients. We've been eating this way as humans, or Homo sapiens sapiens, for at least 300,000 years, and stable isotope testing from 13,000 years ago and beyond categorically show, when you look at the collagen from the long bones and you look at teeth remains, that all humans, whatever continent, have eaten at least 80% animal proteins and the associated fats. So this is what we've evolved on. The only time we've had problems was once there was a cataclysmic event about 12,800 years ago called the Younger Dryas, where we went into agriculture because there was a lot of die out of the megafauna, and we started to be agricultural. Our brains since then in the remains have shrunk by 11%. We've got shorter, and we have all the problems associated with eating plants. Thing is, 600 years ago, you'd not have an orange growing naturally. All the fruit that is now being eaten is not the same as it was even 100 years ago. It's all hybrid. But those cows, they're still the same. They're still the same cows. It's still the same lamb. It's still the same eggs. It's still got all the nutrients that humans have grown up with. It's not devoid. It's not man-made. It's not processed. And there's lots of physical evidence as well. We haven't got the multiple stomachs or the enlarged cecums. We're absolutely designed to eat this way. Our stomach acid is 1.5. It's very acidic. The only thing that's more acidic in the animal kingdom is like a vulture, which is a scavenger, and it needs that huge amount of acid because they're getting dead carcasses. And therefore, when they eat stuff, it needs to be really, any pathogens need to be killed. So we've got all the things. People say, well, we haven't got the canine teeth. I definitely have got canine teeth. They're actually called canines. Come on. So, everything points to this way of eating. And there's absolutely no nutrients, vitamins or minerals that are lacking in this way of eating. But definitely, I mean, there are some countries where if you raise your child as a vegan, that is against the law. Right? There is no law about raising your child as a carnivore. So even the big guys actually sort of admit that this is the way to eat. They just won't say it in so many words because they don't want to. But this is a diet where you don't have to supplement. Every other diet, you need to supplement or you just end up sick.
Do you commonly recommend for people like me, for example? I only started eating meat after 30 years of being vegetarian with intermittent veganism. I think it was 2021. So I still, 3 years on, cannot eat meat without taking my digestive enzymes. So is this something that you commonly see? I know Leah Keith, when I interviewed her, she mentioned that so many, like over a decade on, she still needs to take her digestive enzymes to help her digest the meat. Do you see this commonly?
No, I don't see that as a common thing.
No?
I understand it though, but you know, if you've done a lot of damage for 30 years, eating the right way for 6 is not necessarily going to get you back where you should be.
Yeah, I agree with Stephen. It's not common, but I have seen it, and I only really see it, excuse me, in people that were very hardcore vegetarian or vegan. What Stephen mentioned as far as the stomach acid, to maintain a stomach acidity that is akin to a scavenger is quite a difficult thing to do. And your body is not going to want to do it if it doesn't need to do it. So if somebody's going more plant-based for a long time, the body might think, well, why am I trying to maintain this highly acidic stomach acid for so long? We're not getting the necessary food to necessitate it. And so I see that sometimes the stomach pH can change a little bit. And yeah, I've been around people who were hardcore vegetarian vegan for a long time, including James Lean, the carnivorist. If you're familiar with him and his work, he was vegan for many years. He's been carnivore now for many years, and still several years later, we've sat down and had meals together, and he cannot eat his meals without taking digestive enzymes. So it's one of those things that, yeah, if somebody's transferring from like a standard American or standard English diet to a carnivore diet or a low carb diet, it doesn't really seem to be a problem. Just like oxalates don't really seem to be a huge problem for tons of people out there. It's only when you start to get to the people that were vegetarian, were vegan for many, many years, that you may have some issues that you may need to be worried about. And like Stephen said, they might not just clear up overnight. You may be dealing with these for several months, several years. People that have oxalate dumping report years of having waves of oxalate dumps. And so, yeah, it might not ever be something that you can step away from, though. Same with Stephen, I agree. It's not like super common unless it's somebody that was vegetarian, vegan for a long time.
Stephen, that beautiful list of foods you you mentioned at the beginning of the video, you did not mention organ meats there. So where do you stand with organ meats?
I occasionally have lamb's liver. I quite like it fresh, as in raw, but not in huge amounts. But it's not essential. I mean, it is like nature's multivitamin. One of the best things I ever heard, if you look at an animal, let's say a bison, all right, and you can get bison liver, and you killed that, you were a hunter-gatherer, you wouldn't eat a disproportionate amount of liver. You would eat all that muscle meat, tons and tons of muscle meat, and then a bit of liver. So when people say you've got to have liver every day, well, you couldn't do that if you had one animal. So it doesn't seem to be ancestrally appropriate. So I think most people that push liver have liver supplements to sell. I think, people that talk about the need for organ meats. I'm not saying they're bad. I think they're very good. If you like them, I actually like them. So I have organ meats. I have, like I say, lamb's liver probably once a week, but because I like it, but I don't have tons of it. And I've done all the sort of experiments as well. I've tried vitamin supplements and to see if it makes any difference, because I do believe that I should be doing this with first-hand experience. I try to experience everything, and I felt no different. But then again, I've supplemented with vitamin D and got my level from very low to really high and felt no different. I don't think we should be driven by numbers. I think we should be driven by how we feel. So if you eat organ meat and you feel better, that doesn't necessarily mean if you eat even more, you're going to feel even better. Just find the level that works for you. If you eat it and you find it disgusting and it's like a chore, then don't eat it. You just don't need to.
For the first time last week, I brought liver. It was beef liver. So I wanted to, because I haven't yet tried organ meat. So I wanted to mix a small portion of it, cut it into tiny bits and mix it in my ground beef and fry it and eat it that way, so that it would be hidden and I wouldn't particularly have to put up with the texture or whatever. But I couldn't, because I used a small portion of it. It came in a large pack, and I'm thinking, how many animals did this come from? Why do they do that? It was literally a whole kilo pack at Tesco, Stephen. I mean, massive size. And I'm thinking, surely people aren't eating that much of it. So I just couldn't find it. It was puzzling for me. So
well, that's too much unless you're feeding a couple of soccer teams. But yeah, I don't understand why they've done that.
That's the organ meats. Okay. How do you deal with constipation or diarrhea?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So yeah, in the beginning, especially when you're changing your diet significantly, can be issues like being on oftentimes reports to me that they have constipation. Once you start to press into them a little bit and say, like, wait, are you really constipated, or are you just not going to the bathroom as frequently as you were before? You start to get a little bit of a different answer. People aren't feeling all that backed up. They're just not going to the bathroom as frequently because their body is using everything that's coming in and doesn't need to have nearly as much waste when you eliminate that fiber, like Stephen was talking about earlier. I definitely do notice a little bit more on the diarrhea side when somebody is starting, although I tend to see that tapers off relatively quickly. And so usually it's not too big of an issue. It's usually something that short-term people can write out. There might be certain things that people can do with their food, but generally speaking, I think that people just need to be patient. And again, on the constipation side, really question whether they're actually feeling really backed up or if they're just not going to the bathroom as frequently, or the volume is way lower than it was before, since they're not needing to just push through a bunch of waste products that their body is using.
I echo that completely, because constipation, I think people don't realize, it isn't not going. It's when you do go, it's very painful when you have to push and all that sort of stuff. And if you just think of the mechanics of what causes both those things, so constipation is it's too dried, and diarrhea is it's not dried enough. So it can be electrolyte balance, and hydration can be a big problem. Transit times can be a big problem. If you've got diarrhea, many people add a bit of cheese to their diet and find that plugs them up. So if you go sort of old school and you think, well, what did they say about eggs? Well, you eat a lot of eggs, that plugs you up. You get egg bound, was the expression. Well, maybe that means that's a cure for diarrhea. So if you eat a few more eggs, so try and do the natural thing by using food that will do the work for you, rather than sort of medications or worrying about it. But I think you can mitigate it with other steps. For instance, improving your mechanical digestion. So a lot of people don't chew enough. So now I'm sounding like your grandfather, but you've got to chew your food properly. You've got to take your time, really chew it, because that mechanical digestion is a step that we are missing out as modern humans. We're racing through our food way too much. I personally wouldn't drink fluids while I'm eating. I think you want your stomach acid to be working without any dilution. I would also have a little bit of a walk straight after you've eaten. 20 minutes, I would go for a stroll around somewhere. If you've just got a garden, it's not nice where you live, I would at least be mobile and get up and walk around, which will help with transit times, just get things moving correctly. So I think it's more just thinking about, well, what is the physicality? What is the thing that's causing the problem? And then just fixing it. So diarrhea would be way too much fluid. Constipation would be not enough. So constipation, I definitely feel, can be helped with, like I say, a bit more digestion and the stomach acid getting to the right level, the bile production. So when you first start this way of eating, and this is the weirdest thing, if you do have one of those problems and you ride it out, 2 days later, if you've got diarrhea, pretty much I would say 50% of my clients a week later complain about constipation, and vice versa. Because it's that spectrum of just getting it just right. And your body is still trying to get it right. It's still going to say, well, look, hang on a minute, there's no fiber, because fiber plugs up everything and absorbs a lot of water. So once all that fiber is out of your system, that can actually create the constipation, because what was happening was fluid was being soaked up by the fiber. Once that's flushed out and completely gone, all of a sudden, there is more fluid and your body hasn't got used to that balance yet, but it will get very quick to be sorted. I mean, I don't think it's a big problem, but I think it's a problem that people do have on a regular basis when they first start. They're not once they've started and they've got into it.
It was interesting when you mentioned the eggs, Stephen, because I remember when we were children, if we ever had diarrhea, for example, grandma would bring us boiled eggs, and of course there'd be potato or rice with it, but also the boiled egg. But I had never thought of eggs as egg bound. Is that how you put it? I'd never
yeah
Okay, so people who don't have a gallbladder, so can they still do carnivore?
Yes. Yeah. I'm trying not to dive in. Yes. When you have your gallbladder removed, and I understand why people do that because of pain and stuff like that, you're still producing bile, but that little muscular pocket has gone now, so it's not concentrate, but it will come from your liver. And what happens is the hepatic duct will become a surrogate gallbladder, and it will actually start to act like a gallbladder because the human body is remarkable and it knows what to do. But when you first start, if you haven't got a gallbladder and you think fat's going to be a problem, then don't eat lots of fat in one sitting. So this is one of the things when I was talking about people giving broad statements. Oh, 1 meal a day is the best thing. Yeah, it might be for some people, but not this situation. If you're coming new to it and you haven't got a gallbladder, 4 meals a day might be the best thing. Just smaller quantity, more frequency of meals. Don't look at, Sean Baker eating a whole animal, with a couple of swords. You just have a small meal and then 3-4 hours later have another small meal and another small meal, and your body will ramp up the production of both stomach acid, acidity, and also bile production. And of course, once you've got the fats, you might actually find, even without your gallbladder, in the long term, you'll have a better quality of bile. So food isn't passive. It doesn't just go in your stomach and then get broken down. It signals out, and there's an amino acid called taurine, which we know from interventional experiments, not from guesswork, which most of the nutritional science is about. This is where you give somebody something and then you take it out and you see the difference. Well, taurine improves stomach acidity. So your steak goes in there, or whatever's got taurine in, which is most animal products. It breaks down. It signals to the stomach to say, hey, I'm in your stomach. I need some stomach acid at this level. I'm being very layman's, by the way. And then it will also signal to your stomach to empty at the right time with the right frequency, and also signal for bile production. And this is taurine, one amino acid, which we've seen definitely improves the acidity of the stomach, production of the bile. The great thing is it also helps with stomach emptying and the cleaning of the small intestine. So the whole thing, it's almost like we're designed to eat it.
Yeah. The last question, then we're going to wrap this up. Okay, so does the carnivore diet put you into ketosis? Because some people come into this space because of other comorbidities, and it's important for them to be in a state of ketosis. For example, they have Alzheimer's or they have Parkinson's, and we now know, or anxiety or other mental health disorders. It's important for them to be in a state of ketosis. Is the carnivore diet suitable for them?
Yeah, I'll answer that first. And before I do, I just want to say I'm a little disappointed with how this is going. I was hoping this would be a little bit more of a debate with Stephen, but his answers are so good and we've agreed on everything. I was hoping we'd get argumentative or debate each other, but his answers are absolutely amazing. So yes, generally speaking, a carnivore diet will put somebody into a mild form of ketosis, and people need to ask themselves, what is their motivation for doing a particular diet? You mentioned some pretty serious types of diseases and disorders there, where yes, it might be more important for somebody to eat a much higher fat version of a keto or carnivore diet for mental health purposes or for controlling those diseases or disorders. Many people do not need to do that. And so it kind of goes back again to what somebody's motives are and whether they need to actually be testing their ketones, normally like testing their blood ketones because they've got a therapeutic reason to do so, or if somebody is just doing this because they feel really good. I fortunately fit in the latter category where I do this because I feel good, and I certainly have a list of 20 or 30 things that a carnivore diet has helped me with in my life that I really appreciate. But fortunately, none of them have been a psychiatric disorder. But I do know plenty of people who have had them. The one person I bring up all the time is my good friend Robin Dobbins, who reversed her bipolar on a carnivore diet. And if she adds as much as a half a sweet potato to her diet, she is no longer a lean mass hyperresponder, which means her cholesterol, which is normally very, very high, comes down, but so do her symptoms of bipolar. So that is somebody who has a very specific reason to be on a ketogenic version fan of a carnivore diet. I think, again, all carnivore diets should be ketogenic in the fact that they just don't have very many carbohydrates in them. But again, whether that's important to somebody or not is an individual question, and whether they should be like doing things like measuring whether they're in ketosis or not really depends.
Now, because Casey said that, I'm going to have to say no.
Yeah, good. Yes.
We'll start a debate now.
Yes.
I wouldn't chase being in ketosis though. I'm definitely not a fan of numbers and stressing over numbers. If you look at your ketones, if you've got a keto mojo and it's 0.3, I don't want you to think, right, I'm giving up, I can't get in ketosis, because your body works out how many ketones you need and how much glucose you need. Glucose isn't the enemy, by the way. Chronically elevated levels of blood glucose are the problem, and lots of excursions like spikes and troughs. So your body will still make glucose, not a problem with that. That's fine. Coming from the liver, we don't need dietary glucose. That's I suppose that's the important thing to say. So whether you go into ketosis or not is entirely a physiological response from your body. Some people need to fast for 3 days to get into a decent level, what they call therapeutic ketosis. Now, all the therapeutic benefits of being in ketosis are definitely there when you've got like, you're looking at seizures and brain tumor shrinkage and all that sort of stuff. I think for the average person, I wouldn't worry so much if your ketones are 0.3, 0.5, 1, 2. I wouldn't worry. Your body knows what it's doing. And the biggest thing I'd say about coming this way is don't listen to people like just looking at the screen. You've got to listen to your body. All right. If you do something and it doesn't work for you, then nobody can take that experience away from you. Nobody. If you go on the lion diet and you hate it, and you can't stick to the food, and you can't stand beef, and you have an allergic reaction to salt or whatever it is, then you've got to listen to your body first. So that's always a top priority. Secondly, it's just a guide. Ketosis, glucose readings are just a guide to where you are, which you can use. All right. So yeah, if you're type 1 diabetic, it's critical to know those numbers. So I'm not saying ignore numbers completely, because you do need to know if you're in a situation where you need to know. But for the average person, doesn't really need to know about ketosis and worry about it. The worst thing in the world is to not understand the mechanism. So like ketone strips that you urinate out of, or urinate onto, I should say, that's waste. That's a waste product. Your body has decided we don't need that. Well, might be because you're not fat adapted. So that might look really good. You might look at the stick and think, wow, I'm producing a lot of ketones. Well, just do the joined up thinking, yeah, but you're not using them because they're going down the toilet. So your body doesn't need them at this moment. In fact, what sort of goes better is once you are adapted and you're using ketones, they don't show up in your urine because you're using them. So I think that's the thing. Don't look at it from a very reductive point of view. Don't look at your read and go 0.3 again. I'm never going to be in ketosis. And then look in the mirror and think, oh, I've only lost 10 pounds, and I've lowered my blood pressure, and I've got off my diabetic meds, but I'm not in ketosis. Oh, so I'm actually thinking of real people that have actually said this to me. They will say, I had one person off their diabetic and blood pressure meds within 3 weeks, and they were sweating over the fact they're not in ketosis. I said, look, your body's telling you that you don't need these meds, you don't need this, you don't need that. Maybe you should just trust it for now. It's working it out. So the biggest thing I learned as a phlebotomist is treat the person, not the number. The number is there to guide you, but the person is the one that's got the symptoms, got the experience, got the benefits. And you should do that as a person. You should just not listen to all the experts, take all the experts' information in, and realize what makes sense to you as an individual. Everything I said might make no sense to one particular person sitting out there. That person's in a different world to me. Yeah, that could be true. Your history could be so different that you do need to be in ketosis and you do need to look at the number, but don't think that is the default way of doing things. The default way is to eat what you want to eat, stop when you're full, drink what you need to drink to thirst. No, you don't have to have 5 liters, 2.5 liters. Drink to thirst. Make sure your urine's not clear because then you're drinking too much. Make sure your urine's not dark because then you're not drinking enough. All these things are really simple. and just look in the mirror, get a tape measure, measure your waist, you know, so you know that you don't have to stand on the scale. You can look in the mirror and know, yeah, that I've improved. Or, wow, I'm probably eating way too many ribeyes. You can eat too much in this way. You know, you can do that. You can drink too much water. There's so many things. Just don't sweat over it too much, and don't take everything as gospel. Just, you know, try and be a sort of common sense about absolutely everything. There are animals out there, they don't need apps. They just eat what they are supposed to eat. There's lions eating, you know, meat, not going, oh, maybe I should get my 5 a day, you know. Cows are not looking at lions and going, well, maybe this grass isn't for us. You know, just be natural and go with what you think works for you.
Yeah, don't overcomplicate, you know, something that doesn't need to be that complicated. Unless, of course, you have a number of complicated conditions, in which case, of course, you have to focus on healing. Any last minute words before we say goodbye? This was amazing. I learned so much from both of you today. Just a few important points. I just added them to my notebook. So thank you both so much for this wonderful time. This was a blast.
Thank you for having me on. And it's nice to share the screen with two wonderful people.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you so much. This has been a wonderful conversation.
Bye for now.